Very good. Okay. So, hi everybody. We're all familiar with me, right? I'm here to talk about renters' rights because it can be really confusing for many people. So we're here to talk about what your rights are in various situations, the eviction process, right? Securing your security deposit because sometimes they steal that. So we're gonna clarify everything here today with that in terms of all that stuff. So the purpose of this guide is to provide tenants with a clear overview of rights and responsibilities, explain key legal protections at the federal, state, and local levels, offer practical tips to prevent disputes with landlords, highlight resources available for tenant support, and empower tenants to make informed decisions when renting in California. So we got a couple things here. So on the federal level, there exists some protections that you have. So there's the Fair Housing Act, the Violence Against Women Act, the lead-based paint disclosure, and then I think I missed ADA, so there's also Americans with Disabilities protections, as well as Civil Rights Act stuff, so you can't be discriminated. That's on the federal level, no matter what state you're in. And that all is just self-explanatory. On the California level, we have maintenance of habitability protection, caps on rent. We're going to get on the caps on rent because sometimes it varies from city to city. That's more of a local thing. But there are also like California state protections that caps on themselves, but local levels tend to be more or less strong on what the cap is for rent control. There's also eviction protections and security deposit protections as well. That all comes from California, and also retaliation protection as well. So it all starts with the lease agreement, which is basically the contract you have with your landlord. So in that agreement, there's going to be a lot of obviously there's going to be a lot of terms in there. So what those terms will be is basically defines payment obligations, what day, stuff like that, maintenance expectations and use of the property. It provides protection in disputes. So yeah, ironically enough, there is going to be some protections in the lease agreement itself. You would think that it benefits only the landlord, but sometimes they could be more lenient, and it's a good document to review when you want to see how exactly what you're protected from, what you're not, and what your responsibilities are as a tenant. It also states their responsibilities as well. So yeah, there's limitations on the lease term. So the lease cannot override state or federal tenant protection. So you should be safe. Obviously, you should be safe from those. And also legal clauses like tenant waivers, waives right to repairs, stuff like that. Or a landlord may enter anytime, right? That's obviously not allowed. You're paying them for privacy essentially. And yeah, even if you sign it, the statutory protections still apply. So always remember that. So here's some responsibilities generally that you'll have to the landlord. You have to pay rent in full and on time, again, specified by the lease agreement. You have to keep the premises clean and safe. Obviously, this is going into security deposit territory, but if there is any damage, it will be taken out of the security deposit and more potentially. Avoid damage or nuisance. There are that goes a little bit into real estate law a little bit, so they kind of obviously they're gonna override, but because you can't. There are limitations to how much noise you can make and stuff like that, whether you buy a house or whether you have a rental.
You live in apartments and like your neighbors are like really noisy and stuff and like.
Yeah, potentially you could call the police because people are supposed to have a respectable noise level. I guess an example that I can give to you is Palm Springs. Palm Springs probably has one of the most strictest noise level standard. So, when you go over there, you'll look at let's just say the Airbnb. They have like an equivalent of a lease agreement, but it's really just the agreement for a couple days or something like that. It'll specify that you can't make a certain amount of decibel noise level. Like the decibel is like how you measure noise. And if you exceed that, then there's going to be like fines or something like that. It's really.
What time is that?
What time?
What time is that for Palm Springs?
I don't remember the time, but yeah, that is a good point. It happens. I think maybe, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably like the whole time, but if not, it was like really, really early, like 3 or 5. Don't rely on that information. I don't remember, but it was really like, that's why I use Palm Springs as the example. It's really strict. So I use that example when I talk about like a nuisance or like how much noise you're making. And then back to this, generally you got to follow the lease rules because there's going to be some other things that they throw in there in the lease agreement. And then, you return keys and leave unit in good condition upon the termination of the lease. Those are the terms that they're mostly going to use. Again, there's probably more that might be in your lease agreement, but that's just how it looks usually. Preventing disputes. So before you move in, it's always a good idea to take as many photos, as many videos as possible, because it's pretty, it's sad, but it does happen a lot where the landlord will try to, like we talked about before, use the security deposit against damages that either are naturally caused, like no fault of your own, or or maybe it was from a prior lease agreement. They try to get you and try to take your security deposit. So that's why it's always a good idea. Before you move in, take the pictures of the videos, take notes. And then during the tenancy, keep track of written requests, receipts, emails, texts between you and your landlord, because they might say something that could be evidence towards a process of when you go to court, if you do go to court. And then move out. Once you move out, there is an inspection that you do have the right to attend, which is what they base this checklist that they detail all the funds allocated from the security deposit to the damages. So that's what the inspection you have the right to be a part of. And then there's final documentation. So security deposits in general. I did quite a bit of work on security deposits. I made a big old treatise, but I summarized it right here. So what it is, it's money held by the landlord as protection against unpaid rent, damage, or cleaning costs, governed by California Civil Code 1950.5. The landlord's legal uses are only supposed to go towards unpaid rent or damage beyond ordinary wear and tear, which is what I was talking to you about. Anything beyond what you contributed to cannot be allocated towards damage. And then cleaning needed to restore the original moving condition. So that's another thing in Airbnb. If you don't clean up, they're going to take some money out of that and then allocate that. So that's why I use Airbnb, because most people have done it, if not, so it's very small. And then the limitations of the use, it cannot be applied to pre-existing damage. I kind of already went over that, and normal wear and tear. And then, like I told you before, the landlord must provide an itemized statement of the deductions. And then the tenant you have that right to go to the initial inspection to fix issues before deductions. You also have the right to go to small claims court and contend anything you have that maybe there's something wrong with the dispute if it gets that far. And then, if attorneys do, the thing about attorneys' fees is that, like, when you go to small claims court, attorneys aren't typically involved in that. So, but it is possible that you can get attorney's fees from the lease agreement. So here's some practical. We already talked about this, so let's skip ahead. Eviction and termination rules. So very big when you go through the eviction process. You can only be evicted through a court order. That doesn't mean I can't give, technically I can't give legal advice. I can give you legal information like this, but if I can give financial advice, you don't really want an eviction on your credit report. It tanks it. So, but yeah, if you absolutely, it is something that you, I guess you don't need to go once you get the notice. You technically can only be evicted through the court order. So if it gets that far, the landlord must give you a written notice that I just mentioned that specifies why they want to end the rental agreement and what you need to do and how much time to resolve or move out. So that's what it specifies. The notices contain a variable time frame of when to do those things. You'll see most commonly a 3-day, sometimes a 30-day, or in Section 8, a 90-day pay to cure or quit notice. And then if the eviction was at no fault of the tenant, this is probably very important. If there is no fault on you, the landlord must give back 1 month's worth of rent or waive it. It's not. It really isn't.
Not to find a place and get everything set like you like.
Yeah. Right
now I'm trying to move from my place. I just moved in and somebody died next door to me and his place was infested. And
Oh my God.
with cockroaches, I have OPDC place with my daughter, and so I just talked to the manager. They're gonna move me to the other side of the building to a bigger place because I told them that was too traumatic for me. I can't live right there.
Yeah, it's it really isn't fair, but like, and this is the funniest part is that, well, not funny at all, but this protection was granted in 2019. That wasn't that long ago. So I could only imagine what people had to go through before. Potentially, well, I can't speculate on what happened before, but now it's there. Yeah, tenants can contest. Oh yeah, so in general, you can contest unlawful evictions because I guess an example is when they try to retaliate and to get you to move out. So shutting off your electricity or water, stuff like that, that's illegal. You can't do that. So that's how you can contest an unlawful eviction. They used to, yeah. It's and they would shut off the water. It's sad. But yeah, so there's that. There are remedies for that now. So that's good. But yeah, local laws and additional protections. So like I said, some cities might have stronger rent control, maybe less strict, less expensive or more expensive rent control. So it just depends city by city basis. And then yeah, relocation payments and stricter codes. Some do. They have special protections, domestic violence survivors, retaliation, probably additional retaliation, and entry rules, and abandoned property handled legally. There's, what's that?
When you mean domestic violence, what does that mean? Like they protect what is that?
So I don't know what exactly it means on like on the local level, but on the federal level,
Yes.
I mentioned before, like all the way back here. Oh, that's too far. On the federal level, there is a Violence Against Women Act, so I probably didn't touch on that as much as I should have, but really, yeah, it protects you. It adds more to the law that protects you from being discriminated, and it includes women who are victims of domestic violence. So that's basically what it does. You just can't be discriminated, and that's a federal protection. There we go. Okay, so rent control. Actually, just to touch back because we were talking about local. There are some cities that if I'm understanding this correctly. So one additional example of like a local protection is that I believe it's Oakland that adds protection against people who have like a criminal record or something like that. So yeah, they can, I guess some in other cities, like they can discriminate that, I guess. But in Oakland, from what I've read, they have protection against that circumstance. Okay, rent control. So statewide, that's why I mentioned there's a statewide rent control of 5% plus inflation. Oh, once per 12 months. So yeah, it caps how much they can increase every year. Yep.
How often does rent increase? Does it depend on the landlord or?
A little bit of both. This is just a cap. So if the landlord does want to increase rent, yes, they can, but they're capped on how much they can. So yeah, if it just depends on the landlord, but this is by how much they're limited to. And then yeah, local ordinances may be stricter, like I said, other cities. And then there's exemptions of new construction and some single-family homes that this doesn't apply to. And then Section 8, I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. It's basically a federal housing choice voucher. It gives you affordable rent, same rights, responsibilities, other rent. So like it doesn't make things different. I think the only other difference that I mentioned was that they're gonna you get a 90-day notice instead of the 30 or 3, which is standard. And then yeah, landlords can't discriminate based on source of income in Section 8. And it must comply with inspection and program rules. Okay, so here's some resources that can help you out with renting. So there's the California Department of Consumer Affairs, the court, self-help. I've kind of mentioned that since I've left, we did a self-help clinic before, and then now we don't. We just we do this now. So I always direct people to the self-help courts. The courts that have self-help in them. Yeah, there's legal aid, there's LAFLA, Bay Area Legal Aid, Housing Rights Center, stuff like that. And then there's tenant organizations like the Tenants Together, local tenant unions. And then for federal, it's there's the Department of HUD, House and Fair Housing and Section 8 info. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Yeah, so we have rights on multiple levels, the federal level, state, local, and the lease agreement. The more you document in general, so like I said, before you move in, you take as many pictures and videos as you can so that if there is a disagreement in the future from when you move out, there isn't any predatory or there's protection against predatory security deposit seizures. And yeah, so enforcement requires knowing deadlines, procedures, and resources from the lease agreement, and then just be proactive to prevent the disputes. Okay, that's it. Okay.